I'm sure you've seen quite a bit of positive review on this drone, the Super S by Mould King. And it's got a camera on board, and it has all of these lovely claims. Okay? And I'm here to tell you that it really isn't as good as it looks on the inside. It might fly okay, but I'm not very happy with how this thing works on the inside. So, let's take the cover off, and you can see the cover is actually not that bad. It's molded plastic, and it's light. It does the job. But on the inside, I've taken this apart because the first time I flew it over a beach, it landed, and sand got all over these gears. I had to take a needle and go through these gears and kind of pick at each little groove to get the sand out. The way this is constructed kind of allowed for that. So there are holes in these gears. Obviously, not dust proof at all. I would have liked if these were covered. And by the way, this slides in there. And the cover is just like that. And there's a screw that goes in there. And you can take it apart for servicing like that. But these gears are kind of not what I expected. I expected something a little bit more hefty and able to lift a little bit more weight. And the maximum extra weight this thing can carry is roughly 2 to 3 ounces. So in addition to the camera, which might be half an ounce or something, it can carry another 2 to 3 ounces, which I'm really not impressed with. For a $40 drone, I expect a little bit more from that. And if you take a look at the board, you can see that these solder joints are mostly, they look like hand done, and they're not good solder joints. All of them are cold solder joints. Every single one of these wires, and we also have a little bit of burnt wire over there. That's kind of a bit, It's got tape all over it to keep the wires together. I mean, that's fine, but you can mold something into the plastic to have it hold the wires. It's not going to take that much extra thought. These LEDs over here, they simply stick through the case like that, and the leads are completely uncovered, except for a bit of hot glue over there to keep it in place. So if something goes on, these short, yeah. One other issue is that these battery connectors aren't very good, and after maybe 2 or 3 times of tugging on these connectors, things like this happen, where you've got a wire that kind of came out of the housing. Other issue, there's no on-off switch. So every single time you try to turn it on, you have to plug it in. When you turn it off, you have to pull it out. So that's not very good. It's got a little bit of strain relief, it looks like, with this little plastic molding, but there are 2 main chips on board, and according to some online sources, this is supposed to be a linear technologies, LT device of some sorts, a integrated receiver, microcontroller, and it drives the motors and LEDs and all that stuff, and it takes care of processing. This one here, I cannot find a datasheet on either. I can't find a datasheet on that one, can't find a datasheet on that one, but a good guess would be the 6-axis gyroscope chip that it's going to have on there. Maybe it does an extra processing, just kind of like custom built for this, but I doubt it. It's probably just a regular old 6-axis gyro chip. Now, on the bottom, there's a couple of interesting points. There are a couple of test points. They're labeled, 3.3 volts, DAT for data, CLK for clock, and maybe 1 or 2 other things. But we can have a probe at that later. And one thing I actually want to find out is how this camera interfaces. So I know there's 3 wires, power, ground, probably yellow's data. I want to see what's in there. And maybe we could use that wire to control something else, because this camera is not very good. It's actually better than the, the one you get on eBay, the 808 car key one. But it's supposed to be a 720p, I think. So when you clip this, this has a tendency to just kind of flop around and not give you a very good video. So right now, I do have 1 dead motor, and that's an issue. And the range I've been getting out of this is definitely, I wouldn't consider as long distance. I got maybe 50 feet up in the air. That's just straight up vertically in the air before I decided to cut power and kind of drop down. And maybe at 30-40 feet, I was able to pick up the signal on it, and it went back up again. So not very good distance either. Now in terms of the headless mode, I think it's okay. It's a little bit confusing, but it's doable. And anti-wind capability, I mean, so far so good. I don't think it's got too many issues. This is kind of iffy. It sometimes doesn't go the way you want it to go. This is kind of the drone inside. Let's have a poke at it in a bit. But first, I'm going to go through this thing. So I've taken a liberty to label all these buttons. And by the way, the trim here kind of sucks. You could press a little bit and it'll kind of hover and drift over a lot more. If you make it go back the other way, it'll drift that way. So, and then on reboot, it doesn't actually keep the memory from, at least what I know, because it keeps drifting. Maybe it does have a little bit of memory in there, but I'm not quite sure if it works. So on here, there are these little joysticks, and I would have liked if this up and down also had a spring, because it's kind of weird for me to grab that and twist it sideways at the same time as keeping the same altitude up. So I'm not a fan of these design. On this side, this one's okay. This kind of self-explanatory. It's springed on all four sides. You fit a power button, 4 trim buttons, and a couple of shoulder buttons up here. There's 4 of them, and you can hold them to do that and click it to do that. Now, here's another funny thing. You see this antenna here? What does it do? Well, if you take a look inside, so there's the buttons. Okay, like, this can come off because it does absolutely, there's nothing in here. It's a piece of plastic. It doesn't do anything. So why did they bother putting that in there? This is an antenna, and it's lovely because it's right on the ground. It's right over the ground plane, which means it's probably not going to radiate all that well in the direction you want it to go. And yeah, kind of the PCB construction. You can see this kind of like oily stuff on there. Not very clean, from what I can see. And if anyone's interested, you can figure out what that means. It's built in 2016 at least. I think there's a website on here in the back or something like that, but we can take a look at that in a bit. Buzzer for kind of the beep, so we turn it on. That does the beeping. There's the LED, and you could do the, and that stops the LED from flashing, and that means that your controller is kind of ready in the home position. Okay. Now these buttons up here are regular old tack switches. They just click. Right, nothing fancy. And the interesting thing is that I've taken a look, and all these buttons are actually wired up to the same hookup. So those wires go to there, which go kind of underneath the board. And I can take these screws off. Alright, so you ready for the back? Well, this lifts off, and there are the screws. If you take a look at these switches, they're not that bad. They look like some sort of a variable, like potentiometer or something on the side. Not sure, maybe it's a rotary thing. I doubt it. It's probably just like a 10K pot or something in there. But, and that happens on all 4 sides. But on this one, you can see that on the sides we have something a little bit different, different colors. And yeah, it's kind of a bit. Yeah. We've got a 16 megahertz crystal and a little dinky resistor up there. Now on the bottom, this comes through from the battery connector, and again the soldering job is kind of iffy. These buttons are attached to the board with a bit of hot glue, and the board is really simple. There's only one chip on board, and that's that guy. And if you take a look, I think the lettering has actually been lasered off, so there's no visible marking on there. It's been probably etched off so you can't figure what it is. And a couple of passives on there, but other than that, it's probably like an integrated, dedicated chip for this thing. Now this antenna situation you could probably improve. I would go through and maybe do a computer model of wherever this antenna connects to. I think it might be one of these things. You want to do a calculation of the pad plus the wire itself and see how it radiates, and you could probably figure out something better. Guaranteed, actually. So that's really all on this controller. I don't get what's with this. Like, why do this? There's absolutely nothing in here, and it just kind of hooks over there. So, good job with the controller. Yeah, that's what you get. Now with the flight times, I've been getting consistent maybe 4 minutes of flight time, which, you know, not very impressive. I would expect from a drone to be at least, you know, 10-15 minutes. And with these batteries, let's see, you can see that they are 3.7 volts, so that's single cell, 380 milliamp hours, and yeah, not much to it. I think there's a charge controller on there somewhere. Might be a chip in there, not sure, but it's not very good. And one last thing is the charger. Now this block didn't come with it. This is a cell phone charger, and this charger, when I first got it, this plug port thing wasn't aligned with this hole in the plastic, so I had to take it apart and, you know, put it back in the right place. And if you take it out like this, you would discover that this little metal casing on it got stuck in here. Like, this is the metal casing that came on this, except it came off and it's stuck in there now. So much for the quality. And on here you can say, you must use the original charger. The charger not original factory is strictly prohibited to charge. Lovely. So again, quality, yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's kind of, yeah. Now this also came with a screwdriver, which is really handy. Even if it's a little plasticky thing, it's okay. Other than that, I think I'm gonna go take a quick probe around, see what the data or the clock looks like, and figure out what the yellow wire on this camera does. So I'll be right back with that all set up for you. Alright, so here we have this thing again, blinking away, and I've had a couple of difficulties. The first one being, this board didn't actually want to come out. There are 3 screws in here, I took them all off, and you can try to pry it out, but the board ends up kind of bending like that, and I just didn't actually want to yank that out, because that's going to snap, and definitely not come out. So, a little bit trickier to do, but I think it's doable. There's a ground pad on the right hand side, and I'm going to use that as a reference. Next pad over is 3.3 volts. The next one over is data, and the next one over is clock. This is the video connector, so I'm going to use these multimeter probes hooked up to the probe. It's just kind of doing that, and the ground is just clipped onto the black lead. So I'm going to show you the scope screen right there. It's on DC coupling, 1 volts per division, and right now it's a noise because nothing's hooked up. There's the power, and there you go. You can see that it's about 3 volts, not quite 3.3. You see the reading on top of the screen. And then if I move over to the data pad, you see little squiggles on 3 volts. If I move over to clock, you see some more squiggles. So now I'm going to hit the on button, and you can see the lights have blinked slower. And I'm going to go ahead and do the thing over here, and I'm going to put this aside and not touch it anymore. And then I'm going to go ahead and give this another poke. Maybe we see something more interesting. Now, I don't know what we're going to get, but there's, yeah, nothing interesting. This is a 150 megahertz scope, so if it's do anything faster than that, which I highly doubt, yeah. Clock, no motor's running yet, but I'm going to go ahead and do the video pin, and that's that middle one right there. Not very interesting, it didn't do much. Let's see if we can get the photo button to do something. Did it do something? Huh, not really. Didn't do anything too interesting. I was pressing with my foot, so yeah. That was not too terribly interesting. Now maybe if we poke at the data wires while the motors are running, something interesting might happen. Alright, I give up. This is too much of a mess. So overall, the construction is kind of iffy. You know, with this, to unplug this, you gotta kind of grab the white plug and kind of yank it out. I might put a switch in there if I could get that one motor to work again. And other than that, this is kind of a quick rundown of this particular quadcopter. See you around.